Hi there. Today we're going to discuss solve proportional relationships, independent practice 1 through 8, page 59. Here's example number 1. Remember the cross products of any proportion are equal, so I can multiply 1.5 times p, and that's going to equal 6 times 10, and so I'm left with 1.5p equals 60. Now this is a multiplication equation, so if I want to find out what p is, I'm going to divide by 1.5 on both sides, and I'm going to get p equals 40 because 60 divided by 1.5 is 40. Okay, here's our next example. 11 times p is going to equal the same thing as 44 times 5. So 11 times p will just equal 11p, and 44 times 5 is 220. Now I'm going to divide by 11 on both sides because I want to undo the multiplication. So p is going to equal 20. Okay, here's my next example. 2 over w equals 0.4 over 0.7. So I'm going to set up my cross products. So 0.4 times w is going to equal 2 times 0.7. 0.4 times w is 0.4w, and 2 times 0.7 is 1.4. Now I want to undo my multiplication, so I'm going to divide on both sides. 0.4 divided by 0.4 is 1, so I'm going to have w, and then 1.4 divided by 0.4 is 3.5. All right. Next one. Uh, Evarado paid $1.12 for a dozen eggs at his local grocery store. Determine the cost of 3 eggs. So you have to set up your proportion, which is 2 ratios. So we're going to compare money over eggs. So I'm going to say cost over eggs. So when you set up a proportion, make sure that it's equal on both sides. So the cost here was $1.12, and a dozen is 12. They want to know how many for 3 eggs. So you don't know the cost, but you want to know for 3. So we can just set up our cross products. 12 times x, and then 112 times 3. And then we should get 12x on the left, and on the right, we should get 3.36. Now we have to undo our multiplication here, so let's divide by 12. 12 divided by 12 is 1, so I can just leave an x. And the answer here is going to be 28 cents. All right. Number 5, Sheila mixed 3 ounces of blue paint with 2 ounces of yellow paint. She decided to create 20 ounces of the same mixture. How many ounces of yellow paint does Sheila need for the new mixture? This one was a little tricky because of the way that you have to set it up. They actually want how much yellow paint that she has compared to the total amount of paint because they said 20 ounces total of the same mixture. So we just have to make sure that we're setting this problem up correctly. So here, the original was 2 ounces of yellow paint. The total amount is 2 plus 3, so that's why it was really tricky. They want to know how much yellow they're going to need, but you know that the total is 20. So you can go ahead and set up your cross products. 5 times x equals 2 times 20. So on the left, 5 times x equals 5x. 2 times 20 is 40. So to solve this problem, we want to undo our multiplication. So we're going to divide by 5 on both sides because it's an equal sign. 5 divided by 5 is 1, so I can just leave it as x. 40 divided by 5 is 8, so we would say 8 ounces. Right, and let's not forget our unit. All right. Now we're going to get into some problems where they want you to use an equation rather than a proportion. You can use a proportion if you want. I'm going to show you the equation way. So a car can travel 476 miles on 14 gallons of gas. Write an equation relating the distance, d, to the number of gallons, g. How many gallons of gas does a car need to travel? 578 miles. So here we have the distance, which is d, equals some number, we don't know yet, times the number of gallons, which they said was g. Okay, so we want to know how many is just one um, of the relationship between miles and gallons. So we've got 476 miles over 14 gallons. Okay, and we can just divide this out. So we have 476 divided by 14. That equals 34. That means the number we multiplied our distance times our gallons is 34. So our equation is going to be d equals 34 times g. Now we want to find out for 578 miles. So that goes under d. So we have 578 equals 34 times g. Now we want to make sure that we solve for g because we want to know how many gallons. So we're going to undo our multiplication by dividing. Okay, and it really doesn't matter if the variables on the left or the right, doesn't matter. All right, so 34 divided by 34 was 1, so G is going to equal 17 gallons. Again, don't forget your units. All right, here's our next one. Number 7, Mrs. Baker paid $2.50 for 5 pounds of bananas. Write an equation relating the cost, the number of pounds of bananas. How much would Mrs. Baker pay for 8 pounds of bananas? So we want to write our equation. So we know that our cost, which is C, equals some number times the number of pounds, and the variable they chose for that was P. Okay, so to find that out, we would set up our cost divided by our pounds. So 250 divided by 5 equals 50 cents a pound. So this would be our number in our equation. So our equation is going to be C equals 0.50 times P. Now, what did they give us? They gave us 8 pounds. So let's substitute 8 into our equation. So we don't know the cost, so that equals C. And 50 cents times 8, this one is easy because we can just multiply straight across. This equals $4. All right, here is our last problem. A woman who is 64 inches tall has a shoulder width of 16 inches. Write an equation relating the height to the width. Find the height of the woman who has a shoulder of 18.5 inches. Okay, so we have our height, which they want us to call h, and that equals some number times the width, w. Okay, so let's first find out what that number is. So we have 64 inches tall over 16 inches, and that actually equals 4. So this is the number that's being multiplied times the width. So we have our equation h equals 4 times w. Now we have to substitute what we know. We know that our width is 18.5 inches. So this one's another easy one. 4 times 18.5. And so that equals h equals, oops, oops, h equals 74 inches. And that's your final answer. Hope that video was helpful. Thank you. Bye.